Hello friends, welcome to Bone2Pick. I am Michael Davis, and we are in for a very special treat today. We are sitting down with one of the great trumpet players of all time, Mr. Alex Sipiagin. Alex is, for my money, one of the most virtuosic, inventive, and dynamic trumpet soloists of his generation. He is from Yaroslavl, Russia. He moved to New York City in 1991. He is, to say the least, an acclaimed trumpeter, leader, composer. He has recorded over 15 CDs as a solo artist. He's a founding member of the supergroup Opus 5. He has appeared on hundreds of CDs as a featured sideman, including with the likes of Michael Brecker, Dave Holland, the Mingus Big Band, Gil Evans, George Gruntz, Conrad Herwig, Donnie McCaslin, just to name a few. He has also worked with a variety of pop luminaries, including Eric Clapton, Elvis Costello, David Sanborn, Aaron Neville, Dr. John, Michael Franks. He's currently on the faculty at New York University. He is also in residency, just started one at the Amsterdam Conservatory in Holland, as well as the Music Academy in Basel, Switzerland. It's indeed a pleasure. I've known Alex for many years. We've done recordings together and worked together in a variety of situations. So Alex, thank you so much for taking time out to come up to New City and talk to us today.
It's my first time in this new city. First of all, I thought you made a mistake. New York City, no, New City. Anyway, but yeah, so nice to be here. And thank you, Michael, for in such an introduction. I'm definitely not deserved it, but
well, I think you deserve it more actually. But thank you for being here, Alex. And I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about obviously you grew up in Russia. I'm fascinated to hear what it was like for you growing up in Yaroslavl, and how you got into the trumpet, and what it was like over there in terms of the school music programs and just your opportunities that you had as a young person.
Well, it was still Soviet Union. I mean, it was Russia, but it was Soviet Union years. I would say end of Soviet Union, and I was very lucky. And in age 12, I got incredibly serious teacher who was classical trumpet player. His name is Mikhail Tsamaev. Of course, he's not around anymore. He was playing in Moscow Symphony, in St. Petersburg Symphony. Incredibly high-level trumpet player. So he's the one who introduced me to trumpet, and from the first day, I remember I got totally in love with this instrument because of him. It was not jazz yet, it was just a classical music and some Martian stuff, like I played in the orchestra. I was still in the school. And maybe a few years later, I heard jazz for the first time by accident. It was at Dixieland. Some street musicians play some Dixieland. I really was fascinated, this improvisation. And my next step was when I heard first time Lee Morgan Sidewinder.
Oh, sure.
Also very bad quality recording on a tape, and during those times in Soviet Union it's no way to get a high quality recordings like LPs, and this was no CDs.
Well, you had no access to LPs.
No access. I mean, it was access later, but like 99% access was tapes, which was recorded all over again in a very bad quality. Some of the tapes was from the Voice of America. I remember it was Willis Conover. He was in Washington D.C. was doing Voice of America, and a lot of Russian musicians really tried to catch these waves on a radio and listen some jazz and tape some music from there. So one of those tapes was a friend of mine had only one song of Lee Morgan from Sidewinder album. Once I heard this, my life was changed, and I remember this. I start to imitate, transcribe. It took me like 3 months to transcribe the solo. I was crazy about it. And like you mentioned, I was in Yaroslavl. Yaroslavl, it's an old, beautiful city, but it's a very small city, especially for jazz. And my next step was I was moving to Moscow to study to Gnesin Academy of Music, which I spent 8 years. So first of all, I studied bachelor and then go to master program. And of course, it was a lot more access there. I have fantastic teachers who really support us and provide some information. It was still not a lot of information, but all this information was the best, like kind of blue, red clay. You know,
wow. So
few Miles, few Coltrane's albums, like few Freddie, some Clifford Brown, maybe like 10 albums altogether. But we try to, you know, work on this information as much as we can. You know,
that answers my question. Then, so there was a jazz program at.
It was a jazz program, but jazz wasn't really welcome in a college, especially. It's called pop department. It's we still have to 90% we still have to learn how to play classical music, which is great. It's really give us a lot of, you know,
good foundation.
Sure. And stuff. But pop department, of course, it was jazz, but nobody says jazz department. But even everybody was playing jazz and trying to transcribe Freddie Hubbard and Clifford Brown, and we had a fantastic student ensemble which we used to get together almost every day. And my colleague Boris Kozlov, who actually playing with me up until now, Mingus Band, we started together. You know.
Great bass player.
Yeah.
I was in doing a little bit of research for this interview. I was learning about Gnesin and that it was a very prestigious school, similar, I guess, to Moscow Conservatory. I'm guessing Moscow Conservatory may not have had a jazz program at that point, or a pop program at that point.
Up until now, they don't have it. Yeah, this was incredible place to study. I don't know if you know Timofey Dakshitser. It's one of the legendary trumpet player, like #1 at some point. He's passed away already, but he's the greatest classical trumpet player from all over the world. And he was teaching there. Unfortunately, I wasn't teaching. I studied with him, but everybody knew what he's talking about. Everybody knew what to practice. All this exercise. I'm doing this up until now. You know.
That's great. Such a cool thing. Well, let's talk a little bit about your move to New York. Obviously, that had to have been a huge decision, I would imagine, at that point. But I know for many of us who are jazz fans and followers, the Monk competition and the Thelonious Monk Institute has become a major force in jazz education. And back then, that was probably near the beginning of the Monk competitions that happen every year, and each year a different instrument is featured. So in 1990, you entered that competition and made it to the finals, which must have been incredibly exhilarating. Maybe you could talk about that experience and how that was coming over to perform in that situation.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was just a coincidence. In 1 year, I ended up in America 4 times.
Wow.
And it wasn't my decision to stay here, actually. It just happened, step by step, day by day. And it's just led to my staying here for forever. So, like my first visit to United States, it was Texas Jazz Festival, actually. We got invited with a student ensemble, also with my friend Boris, who I mentioned, was part of it. And we went for a very short period, only to Texas, perform in Texas, and was successful. This was give me a very good foundation what America is about, how beautiful it's here. Like Texas, it was like all of a sudden from Moscow to Corpus Christi, where it's like ocean, and all these people welcoming us. All this food from Soviet Union come to Texas. It was like, what? Like it was daily, you know, heaven. Like, anyway, but I came back to Moscow. I back to Moscow, and all I thought about, when is the next time? And it was, like I said, it was a coincidence. I had a tape where I record maybe like 7-8 months before. And somebody told me, so here is a application for Thelonious Monk competition. You want to use it? You want to try to send it? I said, whatever. Yeah, sure. And I didn't expect even close to get accepted to semifinals. I sent it because somebody was going to the United States. I just gave this envelope. I said, can you send it to me? And I completely forgot about it. I didn't even think about it. And one day I came back to my dorm and I see this envelope invitation from the Thelonious Monk Institution, and I opened this. I couldn't read English at all, and especially I couldn't speak at all. And I still have accent now. I mean, something never changed. So, but I opened this envelope and I see these judges like Donald Byrd, Clark Terry, Wynton Marsalis, Red Rodney, Snooky Young.
Wow.
I was like, what? So I got accepted to be in the semifinal to one competition, the first trumpet competition dedicated to Louis Armstrong. And competition already next week. I was like, but it's no way, in Soviet Union, it's no way to get a tickets or no way to get a visa that short. It need to be like 2 months in advance, go to embassy, do all those bureaucratic applications, stay in lines and wait for answer. But for some reason, when I show this paper to American embassy, they gave me visa like this. Like,
wow,
it's unbelievable. Good luck. So I got visa in 1 day, and then next step I collect some money from all dorm guys. Can you give me some few rubles? So finally I get enough money to get a plane ticket. So, and of course I arrive from snowy Moscow to beautiful sunny. I remember it was October, like Washington DC was hot, and I have no $1 in the pocket, and nobody meet me. I was like, I couldn't speak one word of English.
Wow.
What I'm doing next? I mean, I guess I opened this paper. I showed the taxi driver. He brought me to this hotel. For some reason, I have no money to pay. I said, somebody help me. I don't remember exactly, but somebody from hotel helped me to. So anyway, it was a lot of detail like this. I was hungry. I didn't have any money, but I ordered food by phone. Somehow I press the button. They say yes. They bring me like tons of food. I didn't realize I have to pay for it. But anyway, at the end, it was all taken care of by competition. You know, I had a translator, interpreter, and I remember I was on a stage playing with those guys. It was an incredible experience, and like I mentioned, my competitors and other trumpet players was incredible trumpet players, and up until nowadays we work together time to time. I can mention the names:
sure.
Greg Gisbert, Ryan Kaiser, and Scott Van Holt, Joe Magdarelli, and Walter White, Alex Norris, Jim Rotondi. I mean, all those cats I see all the time. We play in a Mingus band, another Davis, Gisbert and Alex Norris. It's like, man, and like another day we play with Kenny Rampton and Gisbert. So it's like nothing changed.
Amazing that it went on to become the elite of the New York jazz scene. That's incredible.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
And yeah, that's so basically this is the biggest step. After this competition, I just understand there's no way for me to, it's only way it's going west. I have to come to the States, do something. I wasn't going to escape from Russia, immigrate or something. I just want to come to New York and try something for maybe for a month or two, maybe longer. I was very young. I didn't have any family and nothing to hold me in Moscow. And I still came back to New York after this competition. And my next trip, it's like a coincidence, like one after another. I used to work in a band in Moscow, which is like a recording band. So
okay.
Band which record music for movies, for some artists, and everybody very good jazz musicians. And we got invited to New York, open the Russian restaurant for 1 week. And we came to New York, and they like us, and they extend our staying for 6 months. So we ended up work here and check some clubs and some jazz.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. So during this time, I really made my decision. I met a lot of musicians, played a lot of jams, and
that is a fantastic. Thanks for sharing that story. That's an amazing story about your coming for the monk competition without. And somehow it was meant to be, and obviously it's meant for you to be in New York. No question.
Yeah, and this time we decided to stay. I decided to stay because I have an open ticket. My visa was for another year, so I decided to just stay and check it out some more on my own. And then revolution happened in Russia. Then my mother really told me it's not a good time to come back right now because it's really disaster. And at that moment I got invited to play with Gil Evans Orchestra. and some other bands, and I apply for working visa. That's how I kind of decide to stay longer.
That's awesome.
So that's a beginning.
So Gil was kind of like your first arrival as a professional in New York, and
Gil wasn't around at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think he passed away before, like in
okay.
1980.
Yeah.
But another Gil Goldstein, he was in a Gil Evans orchestra, which played every Monday in Sweet Basil. I remember I sit in there once. Louis Soloff asked me, "Why don't you sit in?" And I played one solo, and Miles Evans, leader, Gil Evans' son, leader of the band, like, "Why did you come over next Monday, man?" And I was like, "Really?" So, and it became like a regular Monday sit-in first couple of months, and then he asked me to play steady in the band, and it was incredible time when every time I played in this band, I meet some new musicians, Randy Brecker and guys like that, Delmar Brown, Alex Foster. It leads me to Mingus Band. Like everyone pretty much has the same, word of mouth introduction to some other places and stuff.
Well, when you're playing backs it up at the level yours does, it seems to be when you look back on it, it's a natural progression, but at the time you don't know where it's going to lead. But, you mentioned Gil Goldstein, who is one of the great arrangers of all time, as well as Gil Evans, of course, but Gil Goldstein is a friend of both of ours, and that's, I think, where we kind of worked together the first few times, but it's always must have been very exciting to be around him. He's such a great musician and such an infectious personality. You just kind of want to be around him. He's so much enjoyment to be around him.
Especially remember that night on TV we spent with Dave Sanborn.
Right.
Like rehearsing all over again from 3 in the morning up until 8.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Mingus Band. I know that was also kind of an important landing point for you as a musician, as a soloist. What was that like? And it's still an association that you have to this day.
Yeah, Mingus Band is it's a very incredible step in my career. It's incredible music, first of all, and I joined Mingus Band in 1995. I think Randy Brecker recommended me for his sub, and so Mingus liked what I did, and she asked me to come next Thursday. At the time it was in a fest in Time Cafe in downtown. And that time Mingus Big Band used to work a lot. It was tours one after another in Europe and Asia, especially in the United States. You can make a living by playing Mingus Band only. And also musicians was incredibly high profile, high level, like Gary Bartz, Steve Touré, and Conrad Herwig. Randy played all the time in the band. Dr. Eddie Henderson, John Stubblefield, John Hicks. It was like unbelievable. Dave Taylor on trombone always, and Steve Slagle. I think, Kenny Drew Jr. sometimes played piano. Dave Kikoski, Jim Jackson. It was incredible connection. I tried to connect with some of these musicians very, deep, and it actually led to the next step. We got together with some of them in small settings, play different kind of music, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Conrad Herwig, one of my all-time favorite trombone players, and a dear friend of mine, and a guy I've been inspired by for decades now. But I know you've recorded many things with Conrad. I guess that was the beginning stages of your relationship with him through the Mingus Band. Yeah,
actually, we started play together with Gil Evans Orchestra and Mingus Band at the same time, and it led to our friendship. I remember first time he called me to do his recording back in 1999, Unseen Universe for Criss Cross. This actually helped me to connect with Criss Cross guy, with Jerry Tiggins. This was my introduction to him. And since that, it was a lot of things with Conrad. Now I'm playing his band, like inside of whoever, like Joe Henderson or Horace Silver, recently recorded with Michelle Camilo. And we have some concerts coming up in June, some festivals in Rochester Jazz Festival, somewhere else.
Oh, sweet. That's great.
Nice.
I look forward to checking that out. Let's talk about a couple of really seminal, I think. It's hard to call them gigs because you were an integral part of the groups, but then these two gentlemen in particular are just legendary figures and very, very important figures in the history of jazz. But let's talk about your relationship with Michael Brecker. Sadly, he's not with us anymore, but his inspiration and music certainly is going to live on for decades and decades. But maybe talk a little bit about that. I think the Quindectet maybe was the first time you started working with him. The wide angle CD, an amazing CD that Gil Goldstein did the arrangements for. But maybe you could talk about your relationship with Mike.
It was the deepest experience of my life to be around Michael Brecker for I would say for 3-4 years with various things actually. And I met Michael first time again when Randy asked me to do sub. I remember for some reason I was in London, and they supposed to play a concert, Michael Brecker and Don Elias and Randy Brecker, at some Queen Hall or whatever, and Randy couldn't make rehearsal. And he found out I'm in London. I said, Alex, and Gil Goldstein was, of course, he was conducting and coordinate this project. And they asked me to do rehearsal with Michael. It was a whole day rehearsal. I have the chance to play a lot of solos, to play next to Mike and hear his jokes and everything. And it was incredible, you know. And then shortly after that, Gil called me and he said, Michael wants you in his new project, this Quindectet. And that's how it started. It was very deep rehearsals and deep recording, and we play I think we play Wicked Iridium, and then Mike asked me to join his sextet and go to Japan. It was a month's tour. It was sextet and Quindectet at the same time. And then it was European tour, like a month with a small group and a Quindectet as well. Some concerts in various festivals in Carnegie Hall and Playboy Jazz Festival. It was a lot of different, and of course, for me staying next to him, you know, I remember every second up until now, you know. And first of all, I was shocked when I first was staying next to him. I remember my first concert with a small group was in Blue Note, Nagoya in Japan. And we played one of his compositions, I think Slings and Arrows, and he played first solo, and my right arm started getting numb because I clearly didn't know what to do, what I'm gonna do next. It's like he plays so incredibly wonderful and deep, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I was lucky because solo he took, it was like 10 minutes long. So during this 10 minutes, I really kind of think through, okay, relax. I was telling to myself, come on, chill. You know, he invited you for a reason. Probably he likes something, at least something with what I play. Okay. So I kind of self-calmed myself, and by the end he finished solo, I was fine. So yeah. And of course I have a great chance to hang out with him outside of music, and I remember in Europe, you know, some guys like to chill in the days and times off, and we used to take a walk in Italy, like some long walks, and I have tons of pictures from some beautiful places and talk about stuff, and I remember his last email, like maybe a few days before he passed away. I remember those walks.
That's beautiful.
So it was very deep. Yeah,
he was an amazing just as a person too. I know the half dozen to 8 or 10 times, whatever it was, that I got to play with him and be around him. He was just such an inviting and humble person for such a genius, and it's what a lesson for all of us. I mean, and that's an amazing experience. And for those of you, just to be super clear, definitely worth checking out if you don't know the Wide Angles CD with the Quindectet. Very cool music, and really something worth checking out. Well, let's talk about another seminal figure in your life and in the world of jazz, and you've worked with him in his big band and his small groups. That would be Dave Holland.
Yeah, Dave is definitely similar, I would say, as deep as Michael. I would say right away it was 3 super deep moments so far in my New York life. It was Michael Brecker, Dave Holland, and Gonzalo Rubalcaba, who really opened a lot for me and gave me a lot of confidence and let me grow up, and I understand a lot of things. So Dave was definitely one of them. I remember back in 2000, I got a phone call from him directly, and he asked me to join his big band. At the time, it's a brand new project. And later I find out Robin Eubanks recommended me to him. Just thanks, Robin. And this band went on a high level right away. We record CDs, even start travel immediately. We record second CD, both CD got a Grammys, and it was a lot of tours, like a month long each. A lot of single concerts. Music was incredible. It's a big band with a small group mentality, which actually inside of this big band was his quintet, which is Billy Kilson at the time, Steve Nelson, Chris Potter, and Dave and Robin Eubanks. So they kept the big band together, and the music was incredible, mostly Dave songs. And later Dave come out with the idea of making an octet, which is like a smaller version of big band, but completely different music. And later it was this project Sextet, featuring Malcolm Miller and Eric Harland, Antonio Hart, myself, and Robin Eubanks, and Dave. It was completely different music. So I was involved in 3 different projects with Dave, and all of them got kind of extended time to, we travel, we record CDs, each one was recorded. Octet was live in Berlin, and Sextet was recorded in the studio. Yeah, and I remember Dave, he's the one who actually really gave me the most confidence. Because I want to explain you one thing. When you come in from Russia to New York, you always have this, you always feel a little bit uptight because I'm not really American. I'm from Russia, I cannot swing. Something like that, And actually Dave helped me to overcome this. Come on, just everything is good,
Yeah.
I work with few trumpet players in my life. You're one of them. it's like okay. So.
Well, that's a great lesson. Well, this is particularly important times, but that's what America is you and me and everybody from everywhere. So to me, it's inclusive of everyone. But I can certainly understand, especially in New York, it has that way of making you feel it can intimidate you as a city, But
especially in the beginning, you visit in some jam session where you really feel this pressure to who is who. I mean, I didn't attend a lot of jam sessions, but I was in some of them. And sometimes it's scary. I mean,
yeah, sure.
You cannot overcome yourself, go on the stage and play. But talking about back in the 90s.
Sure. But, well, let's talk about, maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about your work as a solo artist. You're extremely prolific, and I think I was in the research, it looked like maybe close to 20 CDs, but certainly over 15 CDs at this point. You've also worked, of course, with a group, I would call it a super group, Opus 5. But maybe talk about how that evolved. You touched on it a little bit with your relationship with Criss Cross, but how did that evolve for you, and where you headed with it?
First of all, it started from back in the middle 90s. Before you record CD, you have to come up with some kind of concept, with some kind of composition, with some kind of a style. And what really helped me to found my own thing, it's hanging with certain musicians. Those guys was Dave Beeney, Scott Colley, Adam Rogers, and sometimes Chris Potter. We get together and play. Just get together and play some jam session in Scott Colley's apartment. It used to be on 72nd Street, Riverside Drive. And I would say Dave Beanie was one of my first teacher who really introduced me to many different kind of music, including some Brazilian stuff, including some New York modern at the time, odd meters. He was writing non-stop. I remember every night he was writing. I always look at him. I cannot do anything like that, but and I got invited to play some jams, which each of those guys bring some composition, which gave me a really good example. Also trying to do something, why don't I try to do something too? And I remember finally, maybe a year or two later, I wrote my first composition. I brought it to rehearsal, and it wasn't bad. It was kind of, and Dave encouraged me, come on, develop further. And maybe 3 years later, I recorded my first CD, which came out on TCB label, Swiss label, with the same guys who we've been getting together with: Adam Rogers, Dave Beanie, Scott Colley, Jeff Hirschfeld, and Chris Potter. And it was my first experience, which of course, I remember my feelings. Once we record first CD, you're completely disappointed, you're completely bummed out, it's terrible. It's like, this make me think a lot. And I remember Adam Rogers told me, man, this is your step, that's a good departure, just time to move on. And I was thinking about, I was practicing writing, and at the time, in 2000, when Jerry Tickens called me and asked me, why don't you do a record for me? I was kind of ready for next step. And then a year later, next step, 2 years later, next step. In each time I record CD for Jerry Tickens, for Chris Cross, I try to really break to somewhere else. And Holland really helped me mentally and taught me how not to be afraid to take some steps, to take some risks. When I remember this one experience with Dave, we record a couple of takes of one song and I play solo. One take I play very safe and good, and I like this take. But next take I was trying to reach somewhere and I made some mistakes and cracked some notes. And Dave said, this is a take I want to have on CD. I said, why? There's some new stuff. You're trying to reach somewhere you've never been before. So, and I kind of developed this concept. So each time I do a new project, new CD, I just want to try something new. It's the only way to, find new style. And I check my CDs, and it's definitely they're all kind of different. I don't want to say they're great, but it's definitely.
Well, I'll say they're great.
Everybody. One thing I can tell: everybody play amazing.
Yeah.
I just recently did my new one, and I just finished mix yesterday, actually.
Oh, well, congratulations!
And it's really everybody take care of business. So
that's fantastic. Who's on the new CD?
Again, Chris Potter and Will Winson, myself as a horn section, Eric Holland, John Creed, and Matt Brewer, so rhythm section.
Awesome. Well, look forward to that. Do you have a title for the CD yet, or?
Not yet, actually. I'm thinking about it right now, but it must come out today.
Anybody have any suggestions? Contact him now. I wanted to ask you about, because I had the good fortune of playing one of your tunes when we were on the faculty at Tonica in Guadalajara, which was. I learned a valuable lesson that day. Don't follow Alex Sipiagin on up-tempo tunes of any type. It's not going to go well for you.
It's not for you to say.
Maybe for Conrad it's fine, but not for me. But anyway, I remember playing one of your tunes and just how beautiful the tune was, but also the complexity of it and the sophistication was really. I was inspired and really impressed by the level of composition. Is that? It's just like your improvisation, it seems so fluid and natural to me, but I'm sure that it's been a process as you just described. But how would you look at yourself in terms of the compositional element? And I know you just described it a little bit from the inspiration you got from Dave Holland, but there's some...
Yeah, inspiration is one thing, but like you mentioned improvisation, for me, improvisation and composition kind of, it's very close to each other. Most of my composition, I would say, came from shading on trumpet. Try to improvise on certain subject, develop some phrasing, some other direction, and sometimes you get some melody out of your practicing routine, and it's really gave me the beginning of the idea of my composition. Later I can sit on piano and develop, but first idea first comes from practicing. From and when you practice in the right way, not just to do routine what somebody told you to do, you have to do this and this. You know, I from the beginning I like to choose what I want to practice. I want to choose my favorite phrase I want to work on. I want to choose my favorite scale, my favorite pattern, my favorite transcription, like really things I really love. Then I combine them together and put them together. And when you love all those things, it's definitely end of the day something good comes out, some good melodies, some good colors. Like, oh man, this combination of chords or once you get a beginning of composition, that's it. You already, once you have experience writing more and more, you know where to go.
Oh, that's good advice. I know when we had the great Tim Higgins was a guest, I guess a year and a half ago or something like that, but he talked about being around Thad Jones when Thad was in Denmark, and how similar though, but he would go into his writing room when he'd go see Thad, and Thad, all he had in there was his trumpet, and a lot of his ideas came from the trumpet, and a lot of his counterpoint and all the much of the
that's
writing.
Why when you play in this band, which I do occasionally, it's so comfortable and fingers moving so fluently, because Thad wrote on trumpet. I mean,
well, let's shift a little bit and talk about your work as a teacher. I know you have the position at NYU, but you're also very busy worldwide as a guest artist and in residencies. You mentioned you just starting at Amsterdam Conservatory as well as your work in Switzerland. And I know even firsthand from when we worked together in Guadalajara how you and I had adjoining or rooms that were close to each other, and there were much fewer trombone players. But I remember all the trumpet players would always come out just completely energized, and the next day they'd be looking for what you were going to teach them. But maybe talk a little bit about your approach to teaching and the work you've been doing.
Yeah, first of all, just a few words. I started teach back in, I would say, 2003 or 4, and I had a chance to go to Prins Claus Conservatory Groningen in Holland as a resident, like 4 times a year. Joris Steppe, his director, was there. So he's one who gave me this opportunity to get my teaching chops slowly build up. So, and this really helped me to try to teach in other places, and now I feel much better than 15 years ago. Anyway, but about teaching process, I'm just trying to come from what I really know myself, from my own experience. Of course, I'm trying to look at everybody else and try to learn some other methods, try to look some other improvisation method or some pentatonic, whatever it is. But most things I'm getting from my own experiences, because I clearly see what works, what doesn't work when I practice and when I produce in music. And of course, when I practice with the brass players, I spend a lot of effort, a lot of time on technique and embouchure, so brass players know what it's about. And unfortunately, nowadays, it's less and less actually very strong brass players all over the world. And I talk in some Russian colleges. I talk to in Europe and in Asia and in America. It's not as many strong chops trumpet players or trombone players as used to be. And I spoke to a great friend of mine, Sergei Nakaryakov. He's the greatest classical cat all the time. So he has the same opinion. Anyway, so we try to. I have basically. I don't want to describe this method. It's a bunch of exercises, mostly built on what my teacher, who I mentioned before, showed me in the beginning, which developed strong embouchure and, in most important idea, to find your own sound. If you have a strong embouchure, and you have a good airflow, you have an energy, you're in good physical condition. That's already huge. You know, this is where you can find your own sound. And once you find your own sound, you can do the music. You know, so I'm trying to, you know, when I practice with students, I try to find a personal approach to each of them as close as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's worked very well. I mean, I have some students who actually did a good improvement. I mean, they really did.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I know. Seeing those kids come out of the room in Guadalajara, I felt like, yeah, let me go in that room tomorrow and check out what you're doing. But I will give a shameless commercial plug that Alex is going to do a couple lessons for our Hip-BoneU series when we get done with the interview here. So stay tuned for those. I'm really psyched to see those as a brass player myself. So let's talk a little bit. I think we'd be remiss in not talking about equipment as brass players. It's so important for all of us in terms of what we're playing. But maybe describe what equipment you use and how it's evolved, if it's evolved over the years.
Yeah, I would say first part of my career, exactly half. I played on a Bach Stradivarius instrument, which I really enjoyed. And actually, this Bach was presented by Clark Terry after this competition. It was my prize.
Oh, that's awesome.
After I get through the final. And about 10 years ago, I got introduced to Yamaha. I think Brian Lynch from one side and Rabbi Newmans from another side. But somehow I got introduced to those people and tried the instrument, and I really loved it. And I'm playing this Yamaha LA model designed by Wayne Bargeron, who's an incredible trumpet player. And it's a really nice horn. You can play lead, you can play jazz, it could be dark, could be bright. And most important, I use a big mouthpieces. It's a Bach Megaton 1B.
Wow, that is a big mouthpiece here.
And I remember my teacher's theory, the classical teacher, was, then bigger mouthpiece, the more muscles involved, the more varieties of create some colors you have, more variety of colors you can create. And eventually it's going to help you to develop your high register. And I try to follow his exercises, which mostly based on pedal tones, which really it's incredible. I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about right now, but it's basically pedal tones. If you perform pedal tones on the right way, it make your body completely relax and find a center of relaxation and feel very comfortable. And once you find this point, you start slowly bring it up to next register, going higher and higher, and still come back to pedal tones. So at some point, all idea to even up all this register between high and low, so it all feels the same. And if you perform this exercise, especially in a big mouthpiece, it really works.
Wow. And that's interesting, is pedal, I mean, unlike trombone, they're actual pedal tones, but trumpet doesn't, they're kind of more like false tones, right, would you say? Or you would actually consider them to have actual pedal tones that are...
pedal tones is only for exercise. I mean, you never use this on a playing level, but all idea to perform pedal tones with the same exactly embouchure which you perform in middle register, nothing changed. It finds this relaxation point when nothing bothers you, no pressure on your neck, and your body absolutely relax, and just slowly go up, and you're gonna see improvement in a few days. Actually, it's really powerful exercise.
Interesting. That's cool. Very cool. Well, I wanted to, as we kind of wind down with a couple more questions, I was wondering if, and you've done so much incredible work throughout your career, and there's going to be much more to come, but are there a handful of projects that might be your favorites that you've done and you're most proud of in terms of your involvement or your work, either as a player, as a composer, or band leader? Or
Yeah, it's a lot of amazing projects. I was lucky to be part of, like you mentioned, this project Opus 5, which came out. We all play with Mingus Band at some point, and in different times and the same times. I'm talking about Seamus Black, myself, Boris Kozlov, Donald Edwards, and Dave Kikaski. And we come up with idea. Why would we? It was exact point when we got a sound between five of us. It's like a sound really like we play forever. And we started develop this concept, and it was incredible. I mean, we all contribute our own music, especially for this project. It's totally different music, which I usually write for my projects, but it's also part of me, you know. Another project I was involved, which is really incredibly valuable for me. It's a Gonzalo Rubalcaba. I remember I got recommended by Mike Rodriguez to do sub for him, everything subs, you know. And at some point we ended up working together, and he actually asked me to join his label, and I recorded CD for his label, also with him and Dave Holland was part of it. And shortly after, he asked me to record his CD, which is really complicated music but beautiful, based on Cuban modern rhythms. So
wow.
It was a lot of project, like really incredible.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah. This is a question that's somewhat wide, and I'll avoid getting into my political commentary. But you know, especially to me, for us as musicians to grow, we need everybody to be inclusive of everybody from everywhere. And you just mentioned projects that you've been involved in Cuba and Russia and all that. That to me is what music is about. It's what evolution as a human being is about. And I have tremendous issues with what's going on right now in the United States. But that said, I was curious because you've had so much success, and a lot of it is, there's just so many elements. You're like just a great guy to be around. You're a phenomenal musician. You just have so many elements that create success. But if you were to say to somebody from Russia right now, a young person, or it doesn't have to be Russia, it could be from anywhere in Europe or Japan or wherever, that's thinking of, oh, I want to be a musician. I want to be Alex Sipiagin. I'm going to move to New York and try to find my path in this world. What would you say to them? What would be kind of advice, and what, as you look back, you mentioned Dave Holland helped you, evolve in that role. But how would you look at that?
Well, I would probably say different things to all of them. It depends on the level in personality and character. Some of the guys I clearly see it's a little bit too early going into New York. For some of them, a little bit too late. But for some of them, I really clearly recommend it. Don't lose the time and go right now. It's really personal approaches. But what I say to all of them, all the students, you have to feel this energy at least once to come to New York and go to the clubs and visit some lessons and just put yourself inside of this crazy environment. Like the atmosphere, it's never. You cannot find anything like that anywhere. So you have to try it at least once. But
when you first came, did you think, or not when you first came, but when you decided after you were with the band, the studio band that was opening the restaurant, did you feel like I'm staying in New York for the rest of the time, or?
No, like I said, it was step by step. I decided to spend one more month, see what's going to happen, and I got invited to play a couple of gigs. I got really interested. I remember it was a jam session at the time in Visionas every Monday. Dr. Eddie Henderson was leading, and he let us play a lot. So, and after a few months, I realized, how can I be possibly going back to Russia right now? That's my life. I mean, then I still didn't decide to stay forever. I still extend my stay for another 3 months. Then I applied for extension. It was kind of step by step. And at some point, when I look back, oh my God, I'm actually living here. That's it.
Well, I think I can speak for the entire New York music community. We're grateful that you stayed and that you're here and contributing so much in so many incredible ways. As we wind down, I know you touched on, you just finished mixing your new CD. You've got some concerts coming up in the summer with Conrad. What else is on your plate coming up in the next months and maybe year or so?
Well, one of the interesting things, I became art director of my hometown jazz festival, which is oldest Russian jazz festival, like about 40 years old. My hometown Yaroslavl is the oldest city, and it's very close to Moscow, and it's a very huge step for me. Like, I look at the guys like great friend of mine, Avishai Khan, trumpet player, who came back to Tel Aviv and developed his scene over there, and he's still here and there. And for me, it's a big step to kind of try similar things. So I'm bringing New York jazz into my hometown. So this time, Chris Potter Quartet is going to be there, and
that's awesome.
And Ari Honig is going to come with me. So it's going to be really incredible. That's one of the side projects.
That's exciting. Fantastic.
And on another end, I'm getting ready for my quartet tour, which I'm going to Asia in May with my quartet, David Gilmour guitar, and Donald Edwards and Boris Kozlov, going to Korea and China.
Awesome.
And recently we've been there performing Blue Note Benjin, and it was very nice. So.
That's awesome. Well, we'll all look forward to keeping track of Alex Sipiagin and look for his new CD. And once again, Alex, it's just been a pleasure, and thank you so much for making the long trek up to New City. And it's been great, and we look forward to all your great work coming up.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it.
We will see all of you next time on Bone2Pick.